Our New Testament reading for this morning comes from Paul's letter to the church at Galatia. The Galatians were one of Paul's missionary churches, and it's not clear how directly Paul's able to keep contact with them and how exactly he knows what's going on there, but he is very upset with them, for after his departure, apparently they have gone in with other missionaries who have insisted that they circumcise the Gentiles there, that they abide by the Jewish law, and so forth and so on. The opening of the letter is one of the most abrupt and hostile openings of any of Paul's letters, and we hear well into the letter when he has developed his argument a great deal about their new status before God not being about becoming Jewish, but about being in Christ. Listen now for what the Spirit is saying to us through these words. Paul writes, "Now, before faith came, we were imprisoned and guarded under the law until faith would be revealed. Therefore, the law was our disciplinarian until Christ came." And the term disciplinarian here was an actual office. It was a mentor, a teacher, so that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer subject to a disciplinarian. For in Christ Jesus you are all children of God through faith. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have clothed yourselves with Christ. There is no longer Jew or Greek. There is no longer slave or free. There is no longer male or female. For all of you are one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. My point is this: heirs, as long as they are minors, are no better than slaves, though they are owners of all the property. But they remain under guardians and trustees until the date set by the Father. So with us, while we were minors, we were enslaved to the elemental spirits of the world, or the phrase may simply mean enslaved to the way the world is. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, in order to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as children. And because you are children, God has sent the Spirit of His Son into your hearts, crying, "Abba, Father." So you are no longer a slave, but a child. And if a child, then also an heir through God. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I'm going to assume that most of you know that President Obama has nominated someone to become Supreme Court Justice. But I want you to imagine for a moment that you haven't heard about that. I know that may be difficult for some of you, but I want you to pretend that you are hearing about this for the very first time, that you know nothing about this person, whoever he or she is. This is your introduction. The nominee graduated summa cum laude from Princeton and then attended Yale Law School, serving as editor of the Yale Law Review. Then came a 5-year stint as a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Then private practice, beginning in 1984. In 1991, George H.W. Bush appointed this person to the federal bench, followed by a second nomination to the Federal Appeals Court by President Clinton in 1997. And as I understand this, that means that this nominee has more federal judicial experience than any Supreme Court nominee of this century. Now, if that were all that we knew about this person, any scrutiny that we would put the person under would now be restricted to the judicial record. to decisions rendered, to opinions written. But that is not all that we know about this person. We know that her name is Sonia Sotomayor. We know that she is a woman, that she was born in the Bronx, that she was a member of a family who her parents moved from Puerto Rico to the Bronx. And though I have seen articles in the paper on her judicial experience, on what she has done from the bench, most of the headlines that I have seen have been about gender and ethnicity and life experience. And while President Obama has called her inspiring, Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh have called her racist. And an article in the New York Times noted that at a time when many people were hoping that we had moved into a, quote, post-racial era, identity politics is back with a vengeance. And the Capitol has again polarized along familiar patterns. Now, certainly, Judge Sotomayor's own comments had added fuel to this fire, although the fire was already burning. There were some talking heads that labeled her an affirmative action pick before the first snippets of her record were actually out there. But, you know, this is hardly surprising. We humans are really good at noticing differences and dividing ourselves up, at drawing boundary lines and marking ourselves off into different groups. There are red states and blue states, liberals and conservatives, young and old, rich and poor, male and female, north and south. We divide ourselves up by race, by ethnicity, by age, by income, by education, by neighborhood, by musical taste, by denominations, and just about anything else you can think of. Now, most of these divisions are real enough. There are differences between men and women, in case you hadn't noticed. There are differences between being young and being old. Someone who grew up female in the Bronx in a poor Roman Catholic Puerto Rican family is very different from me, who grew up in a middle-class Presbyterian family in the Carolinas. We are different. I don't know many people who are arguing that we are all the same. But I'm interested about the way we take these differences and mark ourselves off into groups. Groups that often don't much care for people from that other group. I remember when I was a boy of 6 or 7, I don't remember exactly, we boys didn't care for girls. Nothing worse could be said about a male friend than Billy likes Susie. And to reinforce this division, there was a foul contagion, cooties if I recall correctly, that you would get if you touched a girl. Now, it's all quite humorous now, but I imagine a fair amount of pain was inflicted on 6- and 7-year-old boys and girls. You know, divisions are real. But the name calling that you can hear on cable TV and on talk radio, I'm not sure it's really all that different from that my friends and I engaged in as little boys.